Hey everybody, welcome to The Blacklist, the show where we interview the elite. And today we have a special guy. He took time out of his day, and he's busy as fuck right now because he has a major conference. But he took time out of his day to do this interview. So, dude, Jerome, I appreciate you being on the show.
Ulyses, thank you, bro. Really appreciate you having me here.
No problem. So, look, you are. How many times have you thrown this event, the Real Estate Domination Conference?
This is our fourth year.
Yeah, and it's huge. You have Dan Fleshman, you have Jen, you have Tom, you have Ty Lopez, right? Like, how did you end up getting all of these people to kind of show up to this conference? Because there's 3 conferences I'd say this weekend, and like yours is probably the most talked about.
Well, we've marketed it hard, so hopefully we have a lot of buzz going on right now.
Yeah,
hopefully our marketing dollars have served us well. Ty and I are actually business partners in a few different endeavors that we do. So that would. But primarily he comes in virtually. So the hurricane in Puerto Rico helped us because he couldn't do his event that he was doing this weekend in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So he piggybacked and came out to Vegas. So we were thankful for that. Dan Fleshman is a friend. Cole Hatter's been a big advocate for this one. And we've been able to pull a great team together. Some of the speakers that I wasn't expecting to pull in, we've been able to pull in. And when I say not expecting, it's because of the busy schedules. And like you said, there's a lot happening this weekend.
Yeah.
So we're blessed to have such a great crew, great friends, colleagues, and it's all come together really well for us this year.
Yeah, it's huge. I'm looking forward to it. For people that don't know who you are, this is like their first time meeting you. Give yourself an introduction. Who is Jerome, and what do you guys do?
So I consider myself more of like a business entrepreneur, but I'm known as like this real estate guru guy, right?
Yeah.
That people classify me as. But I started off in business. I was a multi-level marketing dude back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Got shut down in 97, the company I was in. And I got into construction doing concrete work back in 1998. We evolved into building homes and then into retail centers. And we've evolved. We went through the recession, almost got killed in that. And we're doing a lot of stuff right now in the affordable housing sector of multifamily.
Yeah.
But we still run our construction company. We still develop. We're doing a lot of multifamily ground up, build and hold, meaning that we build it and we retain it, keep it.
Yeah.
And that's our big push right now. But we have ownership in a lot of stuff from the big brands that Ty owns. We run real estate acquisition companies, investment companies, and we've owned everything from restaurants to, beauty salons and you name it, we've owned a lot.
When did it go from, just doing real estate and construction to, advancing more to that stuff?
I don't know if I'd call it advancing. It was more of a need to.
Yeah.
Part of it's different. So a few of the things that we got into early years, pre-recession, were us looking for an easier means. So for those people that are looking for greener pastures, that was me, right? Like I just wanted, construction's a hard industry.
Yeah.
Employees, customers, the fulfillment, you name it, it's hard, but what I found over the last 25 years is that everything's hard, everything.
Yeah.
So I was in search for the easier dollar with a better investment and an easier way. And so I was doing all this different stuff while I was moonlighting on my construction company, trying to find something that would make me as much as the construction company did, but less headache, less stress. I never found it. I'm still in construction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but it's been a great road, and so I got into stuff like I owned coffee shops and juice bars, and we owned a dance school. When the recession hit, I opened up beauty salons, and I bought into the Subway franchise, and I was one of the largest Subway franchisees in the Southwest at that time. And the reason we did that was because we had empty retail centers.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, it was a ploy to fulfill leases and give our retail centers life.
Yeah.
And so we put beauty salons and Subway stores in them. And I didn't want to run the Subway stores, so I bought more of them so I can create an infrastructure of middle management and regional people, and just so I could have multiple stores and could afford to have the staff to run it for me.
Yep.
So that I could focus on what I was doing, which was trying to keep my head above water at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And did it change? And when you're saying pre-recession, what time frame are you talking about?
So that's like from 1998 all the way to like 2007, 2008.
Okay.
And so I had retail centers going up. That was our big push in the development sector. We were doing a lot of retail ground up construction.
Yeah.
New build. We were also doing a lot of value add in retail. And we were doing subdivisions, residential, single family home subdivisions, and even single family buy a lot, build a house,
Yep.
and single lots. And then we had our concrete company, which we still own today. We opened that up in 1998. We're still pouring mud every day.
Yeah. Dude, I have actually now that you're saying that, I have one person who messaged me, and he's like, dude, you got to ask this guy this question. So let me find it really quick, because he's gonna get mad if I forget. All right. So this question came in from Miguel Miranda. He said, how was it that you broke into the land development world, and what would you recommend one should start doing to also kind of break into that world?
I got into it the same way I would advise for other people to get into it. I get a lot of people coming to me. They go, I got this massive lot, right? They'll come, I got 19 acres. When I say massive, it's anything more than just a single build. Like you got to do stuff to it. When I mean stuff, it's like I got to put in curbs and gutters and utilities and street cuts, and I got to widen roads and do turning lanes, and I got to do all this stuff to make a development go. Like, that's not really the way I would advise anybody to get started, because it's a great way to go bankrupt if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more of an undertaking. Now, evolving to that is important. I think it's great. But I got started buying a single lot, building a single house, and I was successful because I made about $85,000 on it, right? Yeah. Like, that's success. I still had my company. I called it like my moonlight cash, because I did it on the side part-time. Didn't take from my company. I'd show up, check on it a few times a week, made phone calls. I didn't even have an admin in those days. I was doing a lot of it myself. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, would help me with little stuff. And so I made it work, right? Probably burnt the candle on both ends of the stick, which is probably no different than what I do now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I got in, once I did 1, I did 2, then I did 4, then I did 6, then I did 8. And then we found a sweet spot at 12 homes a year, and I was able to do that with 1 superintendent, 1 admin, 1 superintendent, and myself, and then still run my entire concrete company, and we'd make over $1 million net profit every year.
Yeah.
So while I was doing that, I was buying value add stuff, and I got into the development side, like on the retail, through owner financing. I'd buy these old, torn up buildings. You guys all know them; they're everywhere. You see them around town. They're shut down. They're boarded up. They look ugly. But they're usually like block buildings that are made out of like masonry block. So the structure itself is solid, but the building itself is dead sin ugly, right?
Yeah.
So you come in, we put a new front facade on it, we put in the nice aluminum storefront glass and doors, and that was our little business model. We stripped the front, whatever was on, wrought iron, all kinds of ugly wooden doors, whatever it was, all mixed match from over the years.
Yep.
We'd restucco and repurpose the outside, put a new roof on it, put new storefront glass, strip the insides down to nothing, paint them white, take off the acoustical ceilings, bring them up to the trusses, paint them black, and that was it.
Yeah.
And we leased the suckers.
Dude, and why did you end up transitioning then to, now where people can, people know you now, right? Like, I would say that kind of business is not necessarily a business where it's like online, right? Where you don't necessarily need a face. But correct me if I'm wrong. But now you're much more of a face, right? You're throwing events. You're starting to become more of like a, we're not starting to, because you already are like a household name. Why make that switch, and when did you make it?
I made it in 2018. I started looking into it in 2016. After the recession, I felt stagnant. I felt like I worked for free for 5 years, literally, just to keep my head above water.
Yeah.
And it felt that way at the time. So for those of you guys who are putting time into a business and you feel like you're not going anyplace, sometimes that's part of the game, unfortunately. But at some point in time, you got to make a conscious decision to make that not a part of the game and really make some moves. And so after beating myself up, I felt like I was working my business like a job. Yeah. And I felt very redundant, showing up to the office, doing bids, doing projects. Then the year would end, and then again, and I got scared. I got so beat up in the recession. I didn't lose nothing. I didn't go bankrupt, but it was so much work to get through that.
Yeah.
That I retracted from development. Then I kind of moonlighted with a few houses, and I would buy a little retail building, but I stayed real small, and I just felt unfulfilled. So in 2016, I told my wife, I go, you know what? I need to do something different. Like, we haven't really made like a massive move like we did when we were younger, and I had never even had a Facebook page. And so I tried doing this, in all honesty, with no Facebook page, never being on social media, and I started learning about the multifamily build. I landed up selling a bunch of junk that I had bought in Phoenix, and it wasn't junk. This stuff was like a dream come true of gold properties that were like Class D garbage. So anybody's familiar with like the 202 in Phoenix and 44th Street, between 40th and 44th Street, right off that exit, I owned all those ugly ass fourplexes there. And I accumulated 64 of them, and along with 12 single family homes, and I acquired all of that stuff for under $1 million. And I bought it cash during the recession. And that stuff was cash flowed for me. So in 2016, I sold it. I made it, everything, all the single family homes I bought for between like $28,000 and $40,000. I sold all of them for over 6 figures, for over 100 grand. So a nice profit on each of them. Sold the fourplexes as a portfolio package and I sold everything for like $2.3 million. So I took a $900,000 investment. We sold it in my net out. My net out when I had cash in the bank, the sale was actually for more, but was $2.3 million.
Yeah.
So we were able to take that and dump that into an apartment complex. And I'll tell you guys, that's why I say I'm a construction guy, entrepreneur, business guy, more so than a real estate guy. Even at that time, I just still didn't even know what a cap rate was. I was going around looking at these properties.
When you invested inside of the,
my whole thing was like, I'm a math dude. Like I just add up the expenses. I look at my returns and I'm like, shit, I like that. I like that number. That's a good number. I'm going to make some money. I'm going to buy it. That's how I did. I didn't overcomplicate it. I think people overcomplicate stuff. I bought a $7.8 million apartment complex like that.
Yeah.
The brokers
and that was your first one?
Rates. That was the first one. And so I'm sitting here Googling cap rate. I'm like, cap rate? What the fuck's a cap rate? And I was literally sitting there doing that. And I remember calling my wife, like, I need to figure out this cap rate bullshit. Like these guys keep talking to me in numbers of cap rates. I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I buy an $8 million apartment complex or just shy of. And this thing's cash flowing. I think I'm a badass because I owned a hotel in 2006. I'll just run this sucker myself. Like, how hard can this thing be? I'll run this thing myself. I'll manage it. So I fired the management company. I was like on this high horse that I was going to do this great thing of managing this deal. And then I was like, holy shit, this is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And so about 9 months into it, I said, okay, property manager, right? Like I didn't want to squeeze off those extra percentages to hire a company in.
Yeah.
So I bring on a property management company, and the property does so much better. I'm making just as much as it was when I was managing it, and I'm auditing paper. And I'm like, okay, like this is the deal. Like right here, this is the deal.
Right.
This is true passive income. So I bought another one 9 months later, and so then I had 2. And then I started looking at numbers because I get real analytical when it comes to numbers. And then in 2018, I said, okay, these things are surpassed what we had paid, where they were at pre-recession. So I got scared because I was like, oh my, now we're going to get to a recession again.
Yeah.
So 2018 rolls around. I get into the public space because I want to start raising capital. I want to scale this thing. And so I decided at the tail end of 2018 that I was going to do this. And I was like, I always called myself kind of the quiet giant. No one knew who I was. I loved it that way. I would wear my Converse, my motorcycle shirts, drive my Harleys, ride my dirt bikes, and just go to work and make millions of dollars, and no one knows who I am. And I can just be me, right? The crazy Jerome that I am. And I was like, okay, I told my wife, well, if we do this, like I'm going to go in like all out.
Yeah.
Like it's not like there's no in between. Like it's like I either do this or don't. And so I set up a Facebook page on February of 2018, and then we opened up all platforms.
Yeah.
And I dumped about $1 million in 2 years into a lot of nothing. In all honesty, I didn't know what the hell I was
ads
doing.
Or what? Or
oh, you name it. Ads, ads, companies that were supposed to help us do events back then, companies that were going to help us do social media marketing, you name it. And no one was able to fulfill it.
Yeah.
And the truth was, like, I can't even blame them. I wasn't ready. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't even know what my message was.
Yeah.
So so I needed to figure that out first. And it took me a few years to figure out what my message was, what I was even trying to do. And I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to build these apartment buildings. So I started buying land and building apartments.
Yep.
And we now use it as a tool to raise capital. We're changing lives because we're educating people. We're helping people go in and generate capital they would have never been able to do without us, building homes. So pretty friggin' cool. So if you would ask me 5 years ago when we started in 2018, if we would have been changing this many lives, we'd be doing this, I'd have probably told you yes, but not in this way. I didn't know that we were going to evolve to this in this exact direction, but I just allowed the business to unfold. And like I told my wife, she would ask me sometimes, she goes, every business we've ever opened, you've made money. This is the first one you haven't. When do we start making money on this one?
Yeah.
And I go, I don't know, but I will, I promise.
Yeah.
So we have successfully are making profits in our business now doing this social media stuff.
That's good. But what was the change like within those 2 years when you're like, yeah, I spent a lot of money, but didn't necessarily know what I was doing or didn't want to, go all in? What ended up making, that change where you're like, okay.
Time, man. It's time. Like, look, There's no recipe for this. Like you either have to figure like I do this. You have to be adamant about what you're doing first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to actively be moving towards something, you know. And I knew I was moving towards something. I knew what I was trying to model like after Ty. I was trying to model after Grant Cardone. I was trying to model after these guys, but not knowing the recipe on the internal back end. Like there's a whole business behind this deal.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
People don't realize it. Like they just think you throw up a deal on social media and like you get known. It's not. It's a business. Just like anything, and there's a system to this business. And the thing is, this is uncharted territory. There's only the people like Grant and Ty and Gary V and these guys that have been at it since like 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that are now household names because they figured it out.
Right.
But it's not taught anywhere. It's not taught in school. It's not taught anywhere. So you're creating a business that's not taught anywhere. You just got to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
So I just knew I'd figure it out. I've been through this multiple times. This one took a little longer than other ones. But while I was going through that, I just knew that there's, just like anything, if you're a real entrepreneur, you know that shit takes time.
Yeah.
Period. Hands down. And tech is not my shit. Like, that's not my deal. You know, I am horrible at it. I don't like it. I've embraced it, and because we have to.
Yeah. Can I say one thing real quick?
Yeah.
It's funny that you're saying tech is not your thing, and you have two phones right there with you, dude.
Exactly. So I have to embrace it, right? I got two phones. I got a full team. And when I say that, the world's evolving, man. You got to evolve with things. And some people come in, they go, Jerome, can I make it in real estate? I'm like, yeah, you can make it in real estate. You can make it in anything. You got to once you make a decision, you just got to focus and do it, right? And not everybody can afford to lose money, but that's what's great about being broke and getting started is the fact that you get creative when you're broke. The problem with having money is you lose creativity. And so one of my biggest problems creating this business was the fact that I had money. And I say that because I would throw money at stuff and then I'd be like, oh, it's 20, 30 grand. And then I'd keep working, right? And I'm like, I tell them, well, it's a tax write-off. Fuck it. Let's just go forward, right?
Yeah.
That's a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
Like you just don't do that. Like when you're broke, you can't just lose 30 grand.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost a hindrance to have money when you're really trying to get creative and build a business sometimes because you don't have that same have to because you're not just trying to put food on the table. Like when you have to put food on the table
right.
and you got to make it, it's different.
Yeah.
So this was so it did take us a little bit longer. We had some distractions going on. You know?
It happens.
Life.
Well, yeah, right. One thing that I'm noticing is that you're very good at putting teams in place and understanding that these things are businesses. The event that you're throwing, that's a business, right?
It is.
Like, and this is fourth one, right?
Yeah, fourth one.
I threw my first like actual like conference like 2 months ago or something like that, and yeah, it's a completely different ball game. But you gotta look at everything like it is a business. So how did you end up throwing your first one, and then did you end up losing money on that, or did you just crush it out of the park?
No, I'd say we lost money on the first one, but it was smaller. I was real conservative. I got a nice little suite down at the Hotel Irvine. It came with inclusive AV and stuff, so we kept it really inexpensive. We probably lost our money on the food and beverage side of things.
Yep.
Not really knowing how the whole event world. It's been a long time. I'd speak on stage for other people back in the 90s when I was in multi-level marketing. I never created my own stage. I had never rented my own ballrooms. So we learned really quick. But because we kept it conservative, I never overspend on stuff. I always kept things simple. I only buy what we need.
Yep.
It's one way I've always ran my companies. I figure I'll learn, and if I don't have, I'll figure out and we'll acclimate. Our second event was COVID, so we did it virtually. That was successful. We made money.
Yeah.
I went to a preset studio like this, and we recorded it, and it was awesome. I go, man, this is cool.
Yeah.
But the next year we went live again because I was ballsy. That's just me. I go, COVID's over. Let's hell with that bullshit. Let's get moving in life, right? Let's go live. And so I was one of the first early bloomers back into the event world in November of 2000. Was that last year or the year before? No, that was last year. So 2021, right? So November of 2021, we were still coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
And so they said, are you going to do it? And I kind of teeter-tottered in the summer. And then I said, I got to make a commitment. Let's just do it. We're going to do it. We're going to commit to it. We're going to do it. So I still stayed a little conservative. We had about 220 people there. We marketed it, but we didn't know what to expect. We had a better turnout virtually than we had live.
Yeah.
But not as good as when we did it virtually inclusively and our show rates were way lower because people were back living again.
Yeah.
And then this year I said, we're going to scale the shit out of this thing and we're going to make a run for it. And so in spite of the recession, it's been a hard sell because of once mainstream media starts marketing recession and interest rates and expenses and all that stuff, it works against you. So you just got to market harder. Yeah. And so we have 700 plus tickets sold. We got the main ballroom there in the convention center, MGM, and we're going to blow it off. We're going to blow it out of the roof, man.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this your last one? Because I think I saw that somewhere.
Yeah, it's our last Real Estate Domination. So it's not our last event. It is going to be our last Real Estate Domination. We're pivoting right now. And so for those people that follow our content, they know that I've been in the multifamily ground up part of construction. We have now built a platform strong enough where we can scale the shit out of what we're doing. You know, like this year we have over $150 million on our books of new development. Yep. Close to $180 million, depending on how you value it in this recessionary market, right? But next year I think we can do $250 million in new development on our books, and we got to fulfill that, right? Like buy the land. There's revenue that needs to come along with that. So we're scaling this into a different direction. And we're going more towards, like Grant does, 10x growth com, more to raise capital than anything. And his whole goal at the end of that is like, I can raise $30 million at 10x growth com out of this conference. We're going to pivot in that direction. Okay. So we're going to do a very similar pivot to what Grant had done years back.
So what's the difference then with what you're doing right now? Are you not making a pitch on, for people to invest with you?
Not directly for people who invest with us. It's more on the educational platform. So we're getting a lot more entry-level people, which is awesome. We still would want to embrace entry-level people coming in. Yeah. But we had hyper-focused on that. And so what happens, though, when we've done that is there's a level of affluency that we actually need to scale. So we want to be able to broaden that, because if we only focus on that, it hinders our capital raisability. So what I noticed, I got these multifamily syndicators that nobody in the world knows. They haven't created a social presence, but these guys can raise more capital than I can. Yeah, yeah. And then I got to go to them and I give them a third of my deal just for their money. Right. And I'm like, shit, like, why don't I just like do this myself, and I'll give the money back to my investors that love me, advocate for me, and give that money back to them, right? Yeah. And so that's the pivot, is that instead of giving my money to somebody that nobody knows and that's raising capital for me, let me give it back to the people that are really advocating for my brand. Yeah. And let's make them some money.
Yeah, which will create more raving fans.
Oh, yeah, it'll just help us scale. Yeah.
No, I've heard, I've seen when, Grant says like, man, there's people that have never engaged with my stuff, but the moment I opened up, a fund or whatever, like they write me a check, right? Yeah. And right now what you're saying is, you've hyper-focused on a lot of people that were probably, new or, things like that, and they've been watching you forever, but now that you do this, it's like, hey, you're going to get people that have been watching you for a while that want to now work with you, and then, do
and we're going to continue growing our audience. Newbies, it doesn't matter if you're new or not, we're going to continue working with you, but that's all we're getting. We're expanding into both. Like, we want to keep the newbies. We want to continue helping those folks, because those people will become investors, right? They're fourth and fifth graders that someday are going to be 18 years old and in the working world, right? Yep, yep. So we got to raise our family, right? We're going to scale this out. I told my wife, I said, look, like, we're really kind of done. Like, we're good. We've done really well. I finished off a few more of these projects. Like, we have hundreds of millions of dollars, you know? And I go, and she goes, what's the goal? I was like, I can't let it go because of one reason. It's my kids. And I don't want what happened to me during the recession to happen to me again, where I got stagnant. And I said, there is no friggin' way, with all the work I put into this, no matter how much money we make, that I'm going to stop. Like, to get to $1 billion, I give a shit less. It doesn't matter to me. Like, we're good. Like, we'll live fine forever, right? Yeah. Like, we're good. But for me, it's like my kids, like, life's already hard enough to figure out. And I've already beat my head against the wall for all of us enough, right? So my whole thing is like, why make them do that? Yeah. Like, they have to work. They have discipline. They have shit they got to do. My kids aren't getting no free ride, man. My kids work harder than most adults, man. They're in so many sports. My son gets up at 4:30 in the morning every friggin' day.
How old is he?
He's 14 years old. He's a freshman in high school. Goes to 0 hour, and he doesn't come home till 8 o'clock at night every night. Damn. And we raise them, man. We raise them like soldiers in athletics. And so, what they do with it is up to them. So my kids get no free ride. But like I told my wife, I said, why do I want to put them through that grueling agony of having to figure shit out? And if I pull my foot off the pedal because I'm selfish, then I do my kids a disservice. I do people a disservice. And so my whole push was like, look, I'm just going to keep this shit going. My son's going to be out of high school in 4 years.
Yeah.
And he's going to understand the real world quicker than he wants to. And when he does, and he comes back and embraces this stuff, I want to be there for them so that I can teach them how to do what we've done. Because it doesn't matter what you want to do. This is interesting to almost everybody.
Right.
So,
right. And I think you lead by example. When we were outside, you were saying like, dude, I don't miss, gym day. Like you can do anything else, right? But you got to get in at least, you said, an hour, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what are other things that your, kids are saying, from you?
Hopefully they see some bad stuff too. They'll see me rant and rave, cuss someone out on the phone sometimes. It's just not a good thing to do with your kids. But they get it, they're around dad. I think the biggest thing is we all make our mistakes and we leave bad examples in our kids, and hopefully they learn from that side of it. They learn from my wife, and they take the other good sides from me. And my wife's a real good example in that regards. And not that I'm a bad example. I don't go around doing that on purpose. But
no, dude, you're not a bad example.
We all do dumb shit. And so, but they pick up a lot of your habits, right? They don't even know. It's just the way we run our household. And my wife and I have been together so long that she's acclimated to my craziness.
Yeah,
you know, in spite of what she even thinks she's acclimated to my craziness. And so we're raising crazy kids, and hopefully they're just crazy adults, and they just go out and do crazy things compared to the average world, right? That's, I hope they embrace that stuff. They're watching us do it. They, the events, even one, I make them get on stage,
nice,
gets them out of their comfort zone,
nice,
and want to make sure that they're a piece of all of it.
Yeah, yeah. Last question here, because this is fascinating to me. So you've done a lot of stuff, and kind of like I was mentioning, you're really good at putting people in the right places. At least from what I know now. Like, how do you determine the shit that you're probably just not good at, or like you said, I'm hiring a property manager here, or a property management company, or doing this. Like, exactly kind of where to hire people to make sure that you're kind of not necessarily in the weeds.
Not necessarily right off the bat, right? Like you find weaknesses, and usually you notice them when you're scaling at a point where it becomes a nuisance. You're like, and typically I don't hire till it's alarming. And so when I say that, when it's alarming, it's like I'm sitting back and I'm frustrated about something. I'm on my team's back, and then I sit back and go, well, shit, that's really not their job. They're not really a professional in that. All they're trying to do is help me, and I'm bitching them out because they're not. Like there's a missing link.
Yeah.
Right? There's a missing link. There's something missing. And so then you have to sit back and you have to recognize that. That's what's important, is recognizing it. Because if you continue doing that, you're going to drive your team into the ground.
Right.
And so you got to recognize it. I'm good at recognizing stuff. And one thing that I've done is I've tried to eliminate employees and tried to onboard professionals. And what I mean by that is I have a lot more 1099, I wouldn't call them employees, but 1099 teammates, and sort of staff. They're independent contractors, but they're professionals in their own regards, right? Like with what they do. I've done it in the development industry, where now instead of me being the general contractor, I don't wear that hat no more. I hire general contractors, but I know the industry, so I manage them.
Yeah.
So I'm managing a professional. I've done the property management thing. We've ran our own properties, and we don't do that anymore. We onboard a property management company. We've recognized the tools that they offer.
Yeah.
So we're able to shave off people and utilize them as a tool. And in a lot of instances, people don't realize this, but I save money on like 941 taxes. I save money on wasted labor. That's their management now. And then I just get a true professional or a true company to help me. And so that has eliminated a lot of waste, and it's also helped me scale. And so, there's a lot of that. You have to recognize what you need and what you don't need. You shave off what you don't need, and you onboard as fast as you can what you do need. Yeah. So
powerful, dude. Well, I appreciate you being on the show. I know you got shit to do. But thank you. Where can people find you?
Yeah, just my name will be in the show notes, and Jerome Maldonado. I'm everywhere. Just Google me. Go to Instagram. The only difference on Instagram is Jerome Maldonado, the number one, and everywhere else is just Jerome Maldonado. Pretty easy to find.
All right, dude. Well, thank you so much.
Appreciate you, brother.